Guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, November 28th, 2020, and today we're going to be talking about the state of Wisconsin and their recount that was funded by the Trump campaign that cost nearly $3 million, which ended up with Joe Biden actually gaining votes. This is very reminiscent of what we saw back in 2016. When the Jill Stein campaign, not the Hillary Clinton campaign, the Clinton campaign conceded the day after the election, the Jill Stein campaign requested a recount in the state of Wisconsin. They paid for the recount by fundraising millions of dollars on their Green Party website, and as a result, they did do a recount in the state of Wisconsin. This was actually one of the few states that we actually saw a full recount completed. If you remember what the website looks like, it was similar to this. I remember looking at it myself 4 years ago. There was a lot of money being raised, over a few million dollars raised in favor of a recount, which many Democrats actually saw as just a last-minute effort to try to see if anything could change in the presidential election results. So, nothing changed. In fact, Donald Trump actually gained votes. Hillary Clinton received 713 more statewide. Keep in mind, if you're looking at the amount of votes, that really doesn't change much. 2 million votes cast in the entire state this election. We saw increased turnout on both sides as well. Joe Biden won the state, but back in 2016, Hillary Clinton gained 700 votes. Donald Trump gained 800 votes. He widened his lead by 131 votes. So not much changed. He won by 22,000 and it changed by 131. So when you put it in perspective, it's absolutely nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And that can be attributed to human error, considering that there were millions of votes being cast, and fundamentally it changed nothing. And that's exactly what we're seeing this time. Joe Biden gained 132 more votes after the election recount in Milwaukee County. Look at that number, 131, 132. It seems to be a magic number that we see. This wasn't a recount in the entire state. This was a recount in two specific counties, Dane County and Milwaukee County, states that voted for Joe Biden by very significant amounts. The Trump campaign footed the bill. They paid $3 million for this, $3 million. That ended up with Joe Biden actually gaining his votes. So he paid the Wisconsin Elections Commission, he being Trump, a fee of $3 million to proceed with recounts in Milwaukee and Dane counties, overwhelmingly Democratic counties. Biden won 69% of the vote in Milwaukee. Biden won 75% of the vote in Dane County. So very large sections of the population in this area voting overwhelmingly for Joe Biden. And if you're looking at what the recounts actually ended up with, Biden made a net gain of 132 votes. Like I said, very, very, very reminiscent of what we saw in 2016. Only one vote off, and both candidates surprisingly actually won the state by just a little bit over 20,000 votes. So it's very coincidental, extremely coincidental, and almost calculated in a sense. But obviously, don't use that. Don't quote me on that. That'll probably end up in some type of conspiracy if you look at it. But it's just, I guess, circumstance, and it's pretty funny to look at. But this recount changes absolutely nothing. In fact, it actually benefits the Biden campaign. This is something that I think the Trump campaign was not expecting. If they truly do think that they have a pathway to victory, even though not a single credible source has just stated that, well, it looks as if this isn't going in their way. They're looking to move on to court system and whatever it might be, but realistically, there isn't much the Trump campaign can do further. They've lost numerous cases, tens of cases, winning 1, losing 30. At the end of the day, it won't change much, especially since this recount is now telling us that Joe Biden is now gaining votes in this state, which makes it even more difficult for Donald Trump to try to spin this state. But what would actually happen? Why are we talking about Wisconsin? I mean, it was one of the closest states in the 2016 election. Joe Biden won the state of Wisconsin by 0.6. It was the tipping point state that put Joe Biden over 270 electoral votes, which means that if Arizona and Georgia had both voted for Donald Trump, it would not matter. Joe Biden would still be president. And if you just take a look at me flipping the numbers, you will see that is true. Wisconsin was the state that put Biden over the top. But if you're looking at Wisconsin, what if Trump is able to win the state? Well, that wouldn't change much either. It's not that populous. It's 10 electoral votes, has the same amount of electoral votes as my home state of Maryland. It really doesn't mean much. And yes, it did vote for Biden, and he probably wouldn't have won the election had he not won Wisconsin, because if that was the alternate scenario, he probably wouldn't have won Arizona or Georgia as well. But this state, alone wouldn't change much. And even if a recount was able to prove that Joe Biden lost the state of Wisconsin, which it obviously hasn't, in fact, solidified that he's won it, and not only won it by more than we initially thought, Wisconsin wouldn't change the outcome of the election. It would just bring Joe Biden below 300 electoral votes. But this is actually larger. And then George W. Bush's win in 2000 and even 2004. So this is the second best performing for a Democratic candidate that we've seen in the 21st century, even without Wisconsin. So if we give Wisconsin to Joe Biden, he ties Donald Trump for the third best performance we've seen for a candidate in the 21st century. But he is going to win Wisconsin. He's already been declared the victor in the state of Wisconsin. But it seems as if what I guess you could say Joe Stein was clinging on to back in 2016. That seems to be the exact same thing that the Trump campaign is doing now. They're spending millions of dollars on recounts that are changing absolutely nothing. Nothing changed in Wisconsin in 2016. Nothing changed in Wisconsin in 2020. I think the Trump campaign's path forward would just be to obviously concede the election, but if they aren't doing that, then trying to just push it off until the electors actually vote. But we're less than a month away from when the electors officially cast their ballots. There is nothing changing the result of this presidential election. Absolutely nothing at this point. And I know if you support President Trump, you may still have hope that somehow there's going to be evidence or anything. But if you research it yourself independently, looking at a lot of the data, it's not going to happen. State legislatures cannot choose new electors. That is simply false. They cannot do that. They've solidified them before. They cannot do it after. So all of these pipe dreams for the Trump campaign are falling through. This recount is falling through. The court systems are falling through. Nothing is working in their favor. And I just think it's very interesting that this Wisconsin recount is now, in fact, favoring Biden even more because it's a recount funded by the Trump campaign. If anything, they were expecting Trump to actually gain votes. They were definitely not expecting Biden to gain votes, especially since this was money that was raised on behalf of his supporters. You can see this article headline right here. Donor sues pro-Trump group for $2.5 million over empty promises on voter fraud. Let me pause that for a second. Empty promises on voter fraud. They found absolutely nothing in this state of vague responses, platitudes, and empty promises. Nothing coming from these groups that are saying there's voter fraud. And these recounts aren't helping that narrative either. So with this money being raised by the Trump campaign, I signed up for both campaign emails just to see what they say. And I still get emails from the Trump campaign saying, don't let them, being the Democrats, don't let them steal the election. Raise money to call for a recount. Raise money to call for an audit of the votes. And it looks as if this isn't changing anything. In fact, it's helping the opposition party. So I think that the Trump campaign is going to stop trying to get recounts. Obviously, they have the money to do so, or at least they're raising the money to do so because they already paid for Wisconsin. It's a number one candidate, a top candidate that's running. Jill Stein was a Green Party candidate. She probably didn't have much outreach to begin with, but Donald Trump obviously does. If he wants to do it, so be it, but it looks as if there's nothing changing the outcome of the results. And if something is changing, everything we've seen so far has favored Joe Biden. And it just reminds me of that 2016 Wisconsin recount when Donald Trump gained 131 votes compared to widening his lead by a net 131 votes. Joe Biden is widening his lead by a net 132 votes. Almost the exact same number. Off by one. Very coincidental. I think that's just interesting. I think it's a fun fact. But at the end of the day, the victor of the election seems to be the one who's gaining votes in these recounts. And when you're the losing candidate calling for the recount, it looks as if it's you just trying to have a last-minute effort. Because don't let this twist anything. The Clinton campaign did not call for a recount. They did not fund these recounts. Jill Stein did it. Hey, Google, stop. They did it themselves. They asked for these recounts. They raised money for these recounts, and they got the recounts done. It was finished by December 13th in 2016. What did it change? Nothing. But at least it wasn't the Democratic Party funding it. This time, we are seeing... Stop. I don't know why it doesn't listen to me. This time, we see the Republican Party, the Trump campaign, in full force, calling for these recounts, calling for these audits, and it's changing nothing. It's changing absolutely nothing. Look at the numbers. Even if it was to change something, even if Trump was to win Wisconsin, even if Trump at this point was to win Pennsylvania, Biden still wins the election. The problem is there is no pathway. There never was a pathway. And these recounts and these audits that are showing exactly what we expected are only further reiterating that point that what Trump is doing is wasteful. It's wasting time. It's wasting transition time. It's wasting his supporters' time. It's wasting money. $3 million in Wisconsin. Gaining votes for Joe Biden. The Trump campaign literally paid for more Biden votes, $27,000 per vote. or $22,000, one of those numbers, $27,000 or $22,000 for each additional vote added to Joe Biden as a result of these recounts. So at the end of the day, nothing is going to really be benefiting Trump as a result of these. Obviously, the main thing for him to do would be to concede the presidential election, but if he's not doing that, I just think that these recounts are just entirely wasteful of everyone's time and his supporters' money, his campaign money. This could be used to fund his 2024 campaign. I don't know. It looks as if he's going to plan to run for 2024, but that's 4 years away. But overall, nothing is changing in Wisconsin. These recounts, if you're on the Democratic side, nothing to worry about. If you're on the Republican side, everything to worry about, because these recounts are showing absolutely nothing. And Trump has lost this election, and until they provide evidence, because there really isn't any, they are going to be in for a pretty long 4 years. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2020 post-election videos, such as this one. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.